Welcome to Module 1. This is where you get a good understanding of the current status of your organization and basically what's happening in your teams. There are two things. One is about learning the assessment, and the reason for that is that later on you would be able to answer the questions and objections. Second thing is I want you to do the assessment yourself. It sends a message to your teams that you are investing time and effort yourself. Please do not delegate this one. There was a case that when I was studying, I found it very interesting. A manufacturing firm invited a group of Japanese practitioners to do the assessment of their operating model. And once the practitioners did the observation and assessment, came back to the leadership team and said to them, your managers don't know where the brooms are. Basically, they were saying your management doesn't know what's happening on the floor. And that's exactly why I want you to do the assessment yourself. So now let's have a look at the Excel. I'm going to walk you through it. First one is the instruction tab. That's if you ever get stuck or needed a reminder, either go to this tab or watch this video again. The tab that has the assessment is the one that is called Team Baseline and has 103 items that are representative of activities or observation points. These 103 items aggregate under 16 groups, and these are representative of 16 aspects of change. Next thing is about scoring, which goes from 0 to 4 and is basically starting from never to always and goes from 0 to 4. Once you do the assessment, you will get a score at the bottom. And next slide, where you can see baseline radar, is where you're actually having a visual representation of your current baseline. Next step is where you define milestone 1 in your Agile transformation. And the result of that, whatever you make a decision on, will be represented on next tab, that you will have baseline and your milestone 1 both in the same radar, which I actually love it. When you do this assessment, I want you to be mindful of 4 points. First, this assessment is designed based on Scrum. This is a well understood and well practiced method all around the world. Normally, if you hear an objections at the beginning about a Scrum, I want you to be mindful that people that are complaining about it are most likely going to complain about anything that you suggest, okay? And the other thing is, I don't know if you've heard of Spotify, the company that went all Agile and has been very successful in transforming their operating model. They were using a Scrum for 2 years before they changed their operating model. Second thing that I want you to be mindful of is using data on this assessment. I want you to be mindful that this is not a scientific tool. It's just using the data as a guide for you to be able to make a decision. If you're particularly coming from finance and accounting firms, there is a good chance that you will be spending hours on this, and that's probably where we're not doing it right. The third thing about this assessment is that it's an objective assessment. It means it doesn't need any expert or practitioner to come to your company to do the assessment for you. There are so many assessments out there, and I have seen them all. They always need a practitioner. With this assessment, what's important is that it will save you a lot of time and money that you would have spent on consulting. The other thing is that later on, if you want to invite a practitioner, an Agile coach, you will be able to give them a guide as what are the focus areas. The fourth thing, which I want you to remember, is about there are some metrics that are not captured here, such as things such as vibe or confidence in delivery. I want you to be mindful of that not everything can be captured in an Excel. Now, let's have a deeper look at assessment so you can later on answer all the questions or concerns or objections. Let's begin. I'll start with number 1. It's about framework setup, and that's where you have all the sessions in place, and this is representation of your operating model and operating rhythm. This is what you're actually changing. Number 2 is about team setup, and that's where you have the right combination of people in one circle in order to deliver a piece of work. What's important around here is to have a cross-functional team. All these skills that you need from the beginning to the end to deliver a piece of work. Number 3 is about the product or project that that team is going to work on. And I will make a quick distinction between these two. I'm sure you know it, but project is something that a series of activities that you start and it will end at a point in order to deliver something. Product, however, is one of your assets that hopefully will stay alive for a very long time and it doesn't stop really. What's important about this point is that you know that a team is having always the right focus and is working on building the right thing at any point of time. Number 4 is really about the backlog management. Backlog is generally a list, an artifact of all the things that team needs to be building. What's important about it is 2 things actually. One, that is backlog is prioritized, and number 2, the items that are sitting on it are ready for dev team to pick it and build it and deliver it. Number 5 is about writing user stories. And I want to call out your attention to this one because it's an important skill. It's easy. It appears to be easy, but it sometimes takes a long time for teams to gain that skills. I want you to be patient with the teams. However, you probably need to invest a little bit more on getting user stories right in your teams. What's important about writing user stories is that they are the true representation of delivering value to our end users. This is something that you actually can charge for. Number 6 is about the sprint planning. Sprint planning is the session that teams will come together and they start looking at what's the priority on the backlog, what's their capacity in that sprint. They grab a bunch of those high priority items and bring them forward and start working on them. What's important is about the commitment at this stage. Next one is about daily stand-up. You've seen it so many times. You know what I'm talking about, but my call out to you is about something that people don't talk about it that often, and that's it. Stand-up is not status report. It is of nature of micro-coordination. When people come together in the morning, I say, I'm going to be working on this. Another person will say, I'm going to be working on this. Is there anything that we need to coordinate with each other? Do you want me to do anything? And that's how they design their day together. That's really, really important. Next one is about, and again, another one of those important ones is a physical board. Remember, this is not a digital board. This is not a tucked away document somewhere in a corner. The physical board is something that you can see flow of work, each piece that will move from to do, doing, done. What's important when you are able to see the flow, you can see the progress of work. You can see who at what stage is overloaded, what stage is probably a little bit light and people are idle in that stage. And what's important about this one, it's a representation of return on investment, ROI. Number 9 is about sprint review, also known as showcase or demo. That's where the team comes together and they will be showing the actual product that they've built. My call out to you is that make sure that you always go to these showcases, you actually see what's happening and what's get built. And it's really important for the team. They look forward to the moment that they can show off their product that they've built. Next one is about retrospective. This is a session that only team will attend, and that's where they will be looking at how they've worked together and how they can improve the ways of working. What's important about retrospective is the actions that comes out of it. And I would also encourage you to always ask for these feedbacks and to see what was the conversation and what are the actions that coming out of those sessions. One other thing that I wanted to say, just to compare retro with showcase. Showcase is all about the product, it's about it, and retro is about the team, it's all about us. Next thing is about Scrum of Scrum. This is a channel that Scrum Masters from multiple teams will come together, and if there is any coordination that needs to be done between the teams, that's the channel. Also, that's where they escalate any problems to yourself, or if you have any directions or guidance for the teams, that's the channel to make sure that teams will receive that direction. What's important is about this two-way conversation that is happening in this channel. Next one is about number 12 is dependency management. I know it's getting a little bit too long, but stay with me. This is a very important one. Dependency management, when you've got multiple teams and you want to make sure that if they need anything from each other, these dependencies and these needs are coordinated well. That's where you would know how well these teams are working together. And if it's done right, you will have a really high productivity. Number 13 and 14, I'm going to talk to them at the same time. Number 13 is about release planning. When you look at a midterm and see what is the team that is going to achieve in that period. Number 14 is about release tracking and forecasting. This is basically what you and your teams will look at and see, are we on track? Is everything happening the same way we've planned it at the beginning of the release? What's important about release planning is considering it as midterm planning. What's important about release tracking is to consider it as kind of like having a transparency. Traditionally, they would call this one governance, but that's something that I want you to be able to explain to your teams, that this is not so much about governance, it's more about tracking and observing to see how we are operating. Number 15 and 16 are actually a little bit different to the others, and this is what's the difference. These are not the ones that you can actually work on to improve them. These are the result of other things in place, so then later on you can see an improvement on, for example, cultures. For example, agile values and principles is not something that you can get a printout onto your people and make sure that they've memorized them. However, if they have all those things in place, you can see and you can say agile framework and way of working has been adopted in our company. With culture, there are two things that are important to me. One is teams having fun. The second one is team get to the state that we call them high performing. When you can see things are moving, there are not so many dysfunctions, there are not so many problems, and you can see productivity is really high. About the culture, this is something that is your intellectual property. No one can take it away from you. That becomes a reason that people will join your company, and hopefully they will stay for a very long time. Congratulations, you are at the end of lesson 1. Now you've done the assessment of your company, and what I want you to do is to grab a snapshot of the radar and post it on our members only group. Second thing that I want you to do is remember, the entire course should be around 1 or 2 weeks. I want you to go there and post the date that you're committing to complete the course. I'm always there to answer your questions, concerns, anything that comes up. And remember, what you ask is not only helping you, but also helping others. I'll see you in next lesson.